Go. Good morning, Henry.
Yeah. Good morning, Nate. It's been some time.
It has been some time. This is for those of you who've been following us in our hiatus. We've been busy doing everything else, I guess, other than talking to each other.
Exactly.
But welcome.
What's it called? Talking
Sorry.
to each other formally. We've been doing a lot of other stuff outside being what's it called? Talking to each other formally about anything.
So what have you been doing?
Quite busy. Growing a business through COVID. That's been obviously one of the biggest challenges of the last 7-8 months. But obviously we are quite prepared for the opportunity that COVID presented. So we've been able to almost double the size of our business through the crisis. While also obviously not forgetting our obligations to the people who care about the third world. We had a few kids who, because of the pandemic, left boarding school, and have ended up being moms. Have ended up becoming moms before they were ready. And these are the challenges that how do you call it? The public health crisis imposes on the poor that the rich don't think about.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's been one of them. We arranging a virtual concert. In addition to the things that we're doing with you in the knowledge box, I'm also trying to do a virtual concert this September. So the kids wouldn't, because this year we didn't have any tours. So we're doing a virtual concert first off to obviously highlight the impact of the public health crisis on people in the third world using music. With obviously focusing on a few of our kids who obviously didn't make it out as we want them to do at the other side of the road.
Can you give a little more context for that? Just for people who don't understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, basically we do a program that provides access to high school education for high school girls in East Africa. So, and we use music as a vehicle to raise money and awareness for this program, plus some net profit from our for-profit initiatives. Now, obviously, this year, from 2020, the crisis locked up the world, so we didn't do any tours, and the schools were closed. Now, most of the kids in our program, they're in boarding school. They leave the villages, stay in the school for the whole school year, and then end up going back home or to their villages once a year for about a month. So because of the crisis, the mandates imposed on all private sector and public sector schools was to close and send all kids home. Now that mandate didn't think about kids who have no homes to go to. So we have to get the kids regardless of what we know about where they're going to go somewhere. So what has happened is a fair chunk of adolescent girls have become pregnant because obviously they're living with people, uncles, relatives, this, that, or anyone except those who have their interest at heart. So they've ended up becoming teenage moms before they were ready because of the fact that they're out of boarding school and the third world government didn't plan for anything for them.
Wow.
So some of them are in our music program. They've been one of them. I think one of the girls has been here before 2 times. So we're doing this virtual concert in September that will obviously go around the normal stuff of access to education and this, that. But this time the emphasis is on how the public health crisis is affecting the same kids differently based on where in the world they are and what opportunities life has given them. And then what we're going to do is have a few of the kids who are in our program who are now teenage moms to also highlight their stories and what we're going to try to do to remedy a few of the things which have happened if we can.
Yeah. Wow. I guess for a little more context for any people who don't know the projects that you're working on, the tours that Henry's talking about are performance art tours with these young, I guess, is it strictly girls? I thought there were maybe boys too.
But mainly girls. They 1 or 2 boys, but mainly girls who through economic exclusion can't attend high school, because in the third world, it's common for families to choose to educate the boys and leave the girls out of the education system.
And so then your mom came and she had a vision and she made this school.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's how long has it been now?
About 11 years.
Oh, I thought it was older than that.
Initially, formerly 11. Before that it was a refuge for kids from the war in the north.
Okay, that makes sense. But yeah, I mean, I think, well, we would have met probably what, in 2013? Does that sound right?
I think 12.
2012, wow.
Yeah, 2012 or 11. Because I remember in 2013 we were doing that documentary that we did the people in Waterloo. It was being shot in 2013, and we would have met before that.
Right. We had that. Well, that story I don't think I want to get into today, where we really got to know each other. Sometime we could do it, but it's just, I don't think today's the day.
Yeah.
Oh man. So yeah, that's I mean, that would keep you busy. I think
Yeah, a lot.
you
I was
moved
so
too.
busy. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I moved to Stony Creek. I moved in with my girlfriend of the last 2.5 years, and here's the surprise: we may be starting a family soon. So I'll let you know how that plays out.
Well, I don't know if I say congratulations because it sounds like it's hypothetical still at this point. So,
Well, it is. It's actually true. Off the record, we're expecting.
well then, congratulations.
Thank you.
Wow.
I should have said it. I know. I should have said this outside the podcast, but so be it.
Yeah. Well, 3 people are going to watch it, so.
Okay.
Chris Earl will see it, and I'm sure you were going to tell him anyway. So.
I want to tell him anyways.
That's wonderful news. That's wonderful news.
I know. And well, you haven't met the girl yet, so you have to hasten up the speed to meet her.
Yeah, I guess so. Now, dare I ask when you're expecting?
No, you did.
Okay.
October sometime. I think it's end of September, early October.
Yeah, but I mean, you're just getting to this point where you're going to announce it after what, like the first 3 months, right? That's the idea?
Yeah, that's the idea.
Oh man, Henry, life. Wow.
No.
Maybe I'll be just saying the same thing, in months or years. I don't know. We'll see, one thing at a time. Exactly. But no news from our side yet on that front. But it'd be nice to have some little Lukenges running around, eh?
Yeah, exactly.
I think maybe
we're not getting any younger.
That's fair. Little mixed kids.
Exactly.
Beautiful. You're gonna have lovely children.
I hope so. All I have to do is give them the best shot at life, see what they turn out to be.
Yeah, well, that's gonna happen regardless. I think you're gonna be a fantastic father.
No, thank you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've spent a lot of time thinking about parenting over the last few years, and how not to screw it up, I guess. And I think that there's a basic level of parenting that you can do very easily, and then the kid's just not screwed up, right? Yeah. And then there's a very, very high bar that you can try to achieve where you really do put them in a great position to succeed. And that's really where you're going to be aiming at. But this is so simple. Just, tell them, make sure that they know that you love them, right? Yeah. And make sure they don't kill themselves. That's about it. Right?
Or kill someone else too.
Sure. You don't end up in jail. I love you. You're safe. You're secure. And that's basically, if you can do that, I think that's pretty much successful parenting. And then you're going to do that too, aren't you? So it's a whole bunch of other stuff. And I've been thinking a lot about the idea of, and this is from Jordan Peterson, but this order and chaos dynamic. And when you're a kid, the entire world is just chaos. You don't know anything, right? And so then the job of the parent is to help the kid start to construct order in the way that they understand the world around them. And that could be learning words. That's a way to create order so the person can navigate the world. And that's really the whole process of learning and having meaningful experiences is expanding that space that's the order that you currently understand and then moving it gradually outward. And if you're too far out into the chaos, it doesn't make sense. It'd be like us trying to have this conversation in German. It's just not going to work. Too much chaos, right? And so you start with where you are and just try to grow that out a little bit. So there you go. Parenting advice from a total, what's lower than an amateur?
Well, see, not all of us have ideas right now. None of us have been there. And be able to offer any lived experience. I mean, we can't have opinions and pass them around.
Well, I don't know. You can't have all the experiences. I have a lot of opinions about things I know nothing about. You you can't have all the experiences, I guess. But that's the mantra today, isn't it? It's like, everyone has their lived experience and you're not supposed to comment, right? But I don't know. How are we supposed to
Yeah,
understand each other if we can't comment on stuff that we haven't been through? Like, tell me about it, explain it to me, right?
yeah, true. But then like I would imagine that if you combine knowledge to empathy, then even if you haven't lived the experience, you can talk to it um, from the sense of like using your heart to communicate the knowledge to someone, and then people should be able to see that and understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, so I will link that into part of our. We just hopped off of a call, and it was relating to the knowledge box, which is Henry's little brainchild that he ropes us all into. Henry's got his little puppet strings that he gets everyone else involved with, and then we just you use the carrot, right? It's stuff that we want, and it's stuff that that we're good at, and then you bring it together. So here we are having this conversation, and there's a gentleman who's running. He's running point basically. Henry's hired him to do everything more or less, all the stuff I don't want to do anyway, so I can focus on the stuff that I'm good at and enjoy, which is great. But he made a comment offhand, and this program is all about financial literacy, and we're targeting disadvantaged youth, specifically, little Black kids from Toronto and single moms and all sorts of stuff. People who are not integrated into the financial system by default because they haven't had the opportunities to be educated because their parents didn't have wealth or whatever. So we're trying to fill in that gap to set kids up for success when they're 14 instead of 40. And so that's the project. But he just made an offhand comment about what do you call it? He said it was brown finance or something like that, like colored finances or financial literacy.
Yeah.
Did you catch that?
No, I think I said it's something like generational transfer of poverty.
No, he was talking about the YouTube channel. He was saying, we got these videos about brown finance, like brown and Black finance.
Oh,
Did you
I
catch
did?
that?
Oh, Danny did.
Danny did.
Oh, Danny did.
Danny did.
Danny did, I think.
He just said it offhand. It was just an offhand comment. And it was just very interesting to me because I was sitting there thinking about it. I was thinking, I
think I missed it. What was it? What was the comment? I think I missed it.
He just said brown finance or something like that, as though there's a different kind of finance for brown people, right? I think what he meant was these are people of color who are presenting about finance, right? But it's just interesting because you say brown finance like it's a different category of finance. Whereas I can't imagine that I would teach a white kid or a Black kid anything different about how to use a bank account.
I know. But maybe you know what? Maybe you made something else, because you could actually construct it to how mainly South Asian and East Asian families pool wealth to do things, and other minorities haven't got to that point yet.
You're talking about Indian families.
Yeah, you know how they pool wealth. Like there could be 5 kids, then they combine and buy one house, 5 of them. Mm-hmm. And then live in it for a bit, and everyone every other 2 years gets one house out of that one house. Right? Now, someone could construct that as brown financing.
Maybe, yeah.
Because what's it called? You could actually look at that model among South Asian, especially South Asian families in all the countries where there's many of them, and see it play out. Like they've played it in England. You see it here. You see it in England. You see it in Uganda too. You see it in Kenya. You see it in South Africa. Wherever there's a number of them. There is an order, a structure in the way they do things.
Yeah, I don't think that's what he was talking about, but I see what your point is. You're trying to make an argument for something that we could call brown or Black finance.
I mean, I just said that someone, if someone read between the lines of what he said, he could interpret. You could think that he was referring something like that when he said it. See what I mean?
Yeah, I know that's an interesting argument. I would also just classify that as a sound strategy. Right? Yeah, exactly. Because we're so individualistic here in Canada, and that's cultural for sure. Where my family, we've helped each other out for sure, but we're not nearly as integrated as that kind of planning. That's like very integrated finance, and I have these friends from Brampton, and when they go off to school, they get a car, but like they got cars in everyone's different names that people are using, and the insurance is all
Yeah,
together with mom and dad, and it's very meshed
yeah,
in.
yeah, yeah,
And it's cultural for sure. But it's also
yeah,
like it produces a good result. And that's the thing about culture. We're not supposed to criticize other cultures, but that's just a good idea.
yeah, true. I mean, what's it called? The idea that culture builds in the idea that you could trust your sister, brother, cousin, right, to be of the same sound financial judgment and discipline as you, for you to be able to literally buy a house with them without having your name on title,
Right.
knowing that at the right time they do the exact same thing for you. Like these things, they're quite critical going forward, because if you ask yourself, what underpins most business and corporate transactions, people should feel that before they do their contract, they have to have the confidence that you're the sort of person who won't walk out on it.
Yeah, and I think that that's actually the underpinning of our entire society is this social
Yeah.
contract where we make all kinds of agreements with each other that we're going to be honorable. And like, what is money, right? I mean, it's
exactly.
very interesting. I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about the evolutionary roots of this stuff, and the sort of offhand comment was the oldest form of food storage, like food preservation, was actually your reputation.
Yeah, true.
Right. And so if you're a trustworthy person, you go, you kill an animal, maybe you give some away to all the rest of the people, and then when they go and they do the same thing, they're going to give to you, and you're going to be honorable with each other, and then you can feed yourself more effectively in the long run. And so
because then you don't have the idea of scarcity because you can't produce.
That's right. Yeah, and it's some of the oldest programming that exists in us. And so when I'm doing business transactions, I operate very much outside of a contract, right? You want to find the right people to work with, people who've got integrity and that you can trust, that they're just good people. And then you work with those people. And the contract, when you write it down, in my experience anyway, what's been great or more effective is you don't write it to create, bars between the two of you that you're going to have to, operate down to the line exactly what you wrote. You write a contract so that everyone's clear. That's the purpose in my mind.
Yeah.
Right, because it's easy to get mixed up on, oh, you said this or I said that and I forgot about this, and oh, did we really write that down? So if you put it all on paper, then you actually know what you talked about and you guys can have a meeting of the minds. Yeah. But it shouldn't be used as a club to beat the other person over the head with.
No.
That's my feel. So I mean, I'm in the process of recruiting additional financial planners to join up with my practice, and I had a conversation yesterday with a guy, which is really productive, and it's exactly that. He's got a lot of questions, but I anticipate them and I understand him very well, and I want to work with him, and he's a good guy. And so at the end of the day, I write a letter out and it says, this is our partnership agreement, but it's sort of just, I don't call it an agreement. I call it a letter of understanding. Right. Yeah. And so it just tells you what is our organization, how are we structured, and sort of what kinds of questions might come up and what are the responses to them. And it's all very open-handed. In our business, the way that it works is, you're managing people's money, and you charge them based on how much they've got invested, and you get your ongoing commissions and all that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of cutthroat business practices that exist. So coming from IG, there's a lot of stuff that they're going to sink their claws into when you leave, and so people often get burned on the way out. And there were things that I definitely got screwed on, but I don't hold it against them. I understand their business, and they gave me something very valuable too. I never would have gotten into the business if it weren't for something like their organization to be able to kind of train up and give me structure while I needed it, and mentorship and all sorts of good things. So, but I prefer an open-handed model where it's like, look, I don't own your clients. You don't own my clients. If you have a relationship with the client, they're your client. If you don't, then they're not. Right. And if you want to go and leave somewhere and you find a better deal, you go and you take whatever is yours, whatever belongs to you as far as the client understands it, you go for it. Right. Because I don't want to work with people who don't want to be there. Right. It's miserable.
No.
So I don't know, but just there's a lot of, I guess it's a different way of doing business, right? Because we're all about the win-win, right? And some people are like, they're only going to win when someone else loses. And I don't like that way of doing business.
Yeah, I don't think that way either. Plus, experience is taught us, if we can look at it, the people who have been most successful, in my opinion, are those who see the idea that we can only win if we all profit from an opportunity. Like there's enough profit for us to split. Basically, if we widen the pie, there are no limits to what any of us can achieve. It's like breathing air. You can't breathe all of it even if you tried.
Yeah, I completely agree. And there are those, in economics, we call those Pareto improvements, which is to say that you're able to improve someone's well-being without it affecting anyone else negatively, right? So, and then Pareto optimal is when you've kind of got everyone to the maximum level where if you were to improve someone else's well-being, then someone's going to suffer. So you want to get kind of Pareto optimize things, and that's the best way to operate in my mind. But I was gonna say, well, I wanted to talk to you about that link you sent me from this Afrikaans school.
Yeah.
Because we were trying to solve problems. Henry and I are. We want to solve. We're going to solve what? We'll solve the native crisis here, and we'll solve the legacy of apartheid over in South Africa. Right? We can figure this out.
While at the same time helping some people buy houses who would not get them at the same time. So hopefully we'll live long enough to achieve it. But anyways, so I sent you that link, right? It was sent to me from a gentleman on something else I'm working on. I'm going to share it with you, actually. It's a very interesting thing I'm working on with people. I spent about 7 years of my life in South Africa. One of them is a lead project something for the Allen Gray Foundation that is doing a whole box of scholarships for mainly Black kids in South Africa to go to university and pass the matric exam, who normally wouldn't because of basically the impact of apartheid. So there's a thing this is one of the things I've been doing through the crisis. There's a few technical programs mainly in the construction sector. Basically, South Africans they've got a major problem with infrastructure in the townships. And the government have been trying to invest money in building some infrastructure, but most of it ends up in people's pockets with no work being done. So there is that issue of corruption in the ANC, which all of us we're fighting with and trying to figure out ways to help the system work better. But that's something for another conversation. Anyways, so we came up with this program through a UK partnership that they're trying to get technology to fix global problems so that the entry cost is low. So I partnered with them to create a curriculum out of the program called BIM, Building Information Management System. They do like AutoCAD training, they do a refrigeration technician training, any of these things, plus some 3D models of construction projects and costing. But all learning is done online. And then what they do is after all this online training, they place people in core programs for 5 months to get the technical skills before they do an online test, like the equivalent of CAD++ or one of those. Then you can use that to go literally be a technician in CAD, and if you're a BIM technician, Revit technician, and then you get paid like a large chunk of money for doing this. So anyway, so I spoke to them and I brought them the idea that we've got all these problems for people who can't obviously go to university because they can't pass matric because matric is in Afrikaans and all the best unis are in Afrikaans. So they bought into the idea, and then we written the curriculum, right, based on the needs of South African construction code and everything else. Then we set up a trust. And then you have any curriculum approved in South Africa so that it's offered as part of mainstream learning. So the fellow I'm working with on that project, Marsh, he sent me that link.
Okay.
And then he says, okay, what do you think about it? So right off the bat, I said it's wrong. I've been making noise about this for a million years. You can have instruction in Afrikaans, right? That has only 15% of the people, right? Because then, if all instruction is in Afrikaans, it means that I have to work in Afrikaans too. because it means all the manuals, all the screwdrivers, everything you're using is going to be in Afrikaans, right? Which means unless I understand Afrikaans, I can't play in the economy either. So he told me, what's he called? Afrikaans, one of the national languages. And they've said the instruction can be in any of the national languages, and the private sector can do whatever they want to do in their own private colleges. Then I said, on the face of it, it looks fair. When you look at it, the Africans are now running the government. They can build their own colleges in Zulu and Shona and this, that, right? And English, right? And the Africans can do whatever they want, right? But now here's the problem. They've got 80% of the money because apartheid gave it to them. So it means they can build all the colleges in Afrikaans and you can do nothing about it because as a government, the African government didn't have the restrictions the Black government has. They could build all the colleges in Afrikaans without worrying about how to break the budget and any of that stuff, right? They could kick all the land and give it to white people to farm on and build factories on without having to think about paying them back for it. But if the Black people try to do it, then it becomes a different ballgame. Well, right? So then he was telling me that the South African government should be in the business of building schools in all the other national languages. And then and plus Black business and all the other stuff. Then I said, okay, on the face of it, yes. But if you look at the economic dynamics of South Africa, even if all the Black people put all the money together to build Black private colleges, they have nowhere near the money the Africans have because they wrote 300 years worth of business and checks to themselves, right? And all the companies now, if you're going to train someone in Afrikaans, chances are the office is going to walk in has going to have Afrikaans speaking people in it too, right? You look at how the private sector is constructed, right? You look at all the banks, look at all the mines, look at the resorts, they're all owned by the Afrikaans-speaking South Africans. And if you can't speak Afrikaans, however much English or Shona you speak, you're going to struggle to get ahead.
Yeah, is the solution? I mean, there's a lot of stuff you were just bringing up there. So obviously, I think we're in agreement that you can't solve these problems top down, in the sense that you have to start with the cause and then work forward. So that's what I don't like about what's it called? BEE, is it? Or no, BEE, Black Economic Empowerment, right? And that's the affirmative action program. Yeah. And it's a really intense form of affirmative action where your company or organization will get classified based on this, essentially how many Black people are in there as a proportion. And if you don't hit a certain number, you can't get certain contracts from the government because you don't have enough Black people, which again, sounds like it could try to address the problem that you're talking about, but it ends up being that a lot of these jobs just sit around empty because there's not a 40-year-old Black woman who can do the job that exists in the country because the training and education isn't there, right? And so, it seems pretty obvious to me that the solution is they've got exactly wrong. They've got things exactly backwards, right? Because you got all these universities still being created in the private sector that are strictly Afrikaans. And so all the best jobs in education are going to go to those people. And then the Black people, there's no, they can't even get through matriculation, it sounds like, because the education system is so fraught.
Yeah.
But is the solution not maybe teaching strictly English? It feels like that's probably a really good option to try to direct everyone to learn this third language, right?
I agree. English is one of the national languages. English, right. African, Zulu, and Shona. Those four.
Okay.
Right, but the Africans themselves don't want to learn English either.
Oh, okay.
Because if they do, they're going to lose their privileges. Right, like if they say that we're going to put all instructions in Afrikaans, the next play will be like all private companies English against Afrikaans as a mode of communication in offices. They don't like that either.
Sorry, you're saying like the Dutch descended Afrikaans, they don't want to have English because that would
Yeah.
open. Yeah. Because right now it's
No.
they can exploit it.
Yeah, exactly. They've got their cake and they're eating it every day and icing it at every turn that they can find.
Yeah. So is the suggestion then that there should be something done about the private institutions to kind of enforce some kind of like a little
I
bit
agree.
more language equality?
Actually, I think they should force the private, especially, this is going to sound bad from a capitalist. In order to fix a difficult social wrong, you sector act differently, right? Like I would say the idea of forcing the Afrikaans, that for every private school you're building that's in Afrikaans, you need one that's in English that has the exact same classes with exact same tutorship with exact same qualities. If you can't do that, won't work.
And would English be sufficient, or would it also have to be Zulu? And was it Shona you said?
Yeah, I think English would, because many Africans speak English, but many Africans don't like learn Afrikaans because it's like a baton they've been fighting for a million years.
That makes sense. Yeah, we're not anarcho-capitalists, we're social capitalists, and we have to acknowledge that if you're gonna have a game to play, there got to be rules to the game, right? And it needs to be fair as much as you can make it fair without ruining the game, right? So, and if you've got a situation where, I mean, we have in the Olympics, we have all these categories. Men don't compete with women generally or at all, and there's a reason for that, right? Just doesn't make for a fair game, and adults don't compete with children, right? Like it's just, and so if you're at such a disadvantage, something needs to be done. But the issue is I find a lot of these things are not carefully thought through, and people aren't willing to wait. You want a quick fix. I see what we're doing right now up north, and my wife's friend, she's a nurse up that way, and you met her, yeah, maid of honor at the wedding. And I get all these stories about what goes on up there, but it's a disaster, man. And the native chief in one of the I guess it would be a tribe, exactly, wherever she went to one of these reserves, that's the word I was looking for. She was up there, and they need security up there because she's been shot at by people who I don't even know why they would do that, but she had bullets fired at her as a nurse trying to help these people, right? And so they need security on site at the clinic to, be safe. And they supposedly hired, natives from the tribe, but like it's pretty awful. I mean, I've seen jokes and memes about South African cops from my old assistant, and how they just like kind of are, eating donuts and sleeping on the job and that kind of thing. And I know it's a bit of a joke, but yeah, that's kind of what they get up there with the natives, as well as they'll just try to grab somebody if they can find, realistic, if they can find a sober person to just grab anyone to sit there, but they're not professionals. And so the OPP is on site, right? The Ontario Provincial Police to provide that security. And so what ended up happening was this chief, he booted the OPP officers off the reserve. And then Health Canada was like, well, we can't send nurses in there without security. And so then the nurses pull out because of safety issues. And then the chief gets in touch with the media and says, look, we're being abandoned by, the white man, essentially. And look at what they're doing again. It's a really nasty business, what they're up to. But it's a community that's just so damaged that no one can figure out exactly what to do to help. And then you have this sort of politicizing back and forth, because these chiefs are kind of like the big men in Africa, you know what I mean? Like to get those contracts, and then they take half, and maybe half makes it into the, to the reserve community, but not likely.
If they're lucky, maybe actually most of it doesn't. It ends up buying 4x4 trucks and buying alcohol.
I was gonna say, don't forget the booze. Yeah. She says that they never have more issues than the days that the social support checks come in, and then everyone can go ahead and liquor up. It's some of the communities are doing very well, but some of them are in really rough shape. And the problem is that now you've got a generation of kids growing up with parents that are totally dysfunctional,
Yeah.
And those kids are, I mean, some of them are damaged in utero, but I mean, just try to grow up in an environment like that with like nobody has any hope. There's no future, right? There's no vision for what your life could be. And so you just medicate, right? And I totally get that. And the ones that are successful in some of these really broken communities, a lot of them end up leaving to go to school. And why would you go back? Right.
Yeah, exactly. Because
And,
you're put in a position of having to choose.
yeah. And then there's a rare person like yourself who gets out of a situation that you were in. You know, you've elevated your social standing to where you are, and you're in Canada now, and you're going to stay in Canada because it's a wonderful place to live. But you devote yourself to serving the community that you came from, right?
Yeah.
And that's remarkable because I don't think a lot of people have that in them. I haven't seen it a lot. I think a lot of the time the easier thing is just to move on with your life. But then also I know a lot of people who come from other countries, they are very diligent about sending money back. So
Yeah.
I know that's what's happening in Venezuela right now. I watched a video of a guy showing, talking about currency and shopping, and a lot of their prices are very similar to what our prices are in Canada. But if a full-time wage for a month is, I think $100 or something, and you try to live on 100, like imagine trying to make that work if you were paying the prices we pay for things around here, and
you have 2 kids.
Yeah, well, exactly.
You have a family.
Yeah, good luck with that. Yeah. So he said basically everybody in the country has some kind of angel that's outside of the country sending them cash every month. And that's how you get by.
Especially in the States. And surprisingly, and Venezuela shouldn't be having any problems.
No, they should not. That's their own fault. Yeah.
Right? It's just it's just a tragedy of it. It is literally what's it called? Ideology clouding like simple judgment.
Yeah, it's the same.
I don't think socialism is bad or communism. It's just that people they get hold of an ideology and use it.
Sorry, you're cutting out there a bit. I missed that.
Yeah, sorry. I was saying that if you look at how like socialism has been used all over the world, right? It's been used by despots to oppress other people, right? So they equate socialism or communism to despotism, and I don't think it is, because if it was, none of all these countries would be functioning. Like the Canadians, most of the British, they like social. They like I wouldn't say communists, but they're socialists.
Yeah,
most of them, they're
democratic socialists. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, all of them. But the people in Venezuela have gotten rid of the democracy and focused on socialism, and then communism, and then they've created this a utopia of we all equal, and I want to give you bread, 4 pieces, and this, that, and the country can run the business of the business of production and the business of politics are all run by the country. The country can't do both. The country has to focus on taxation and fiscal policy. That's what it's good at. Yeah,
and the market's good at pricing, and the government's very bad at it. And I was again listening to more podcasts, but Friedrich Hayek. Have you heard of him?
No. What is it then?
The book's called The Road to Serfdom.
Oh, surprisingly, I've had clips of that book. I've read a few pieces of it. I don't know who's the author though.
Yeah, so that's the author. I think he's German. But the idea was they were just mapping out exactly how these things, like what's the function of the despot taking control, because it doesn't start that way, right? But
no,
he argues that it's the central planning that ends up feeding into a totalitarian regime, which makes sense. But I also think it's a little more nefarious than that, because there's this conversation, if you read Marx, right? He says, there are 2 categories of people. You got the bourgeoisie and you got the proletariat. You've got the oppressor and the oppressed. It's a very nice, clean way to look at the world, isn't it? Right? And that's the appeal of ideologies, is that they do clarify some things, and it's not like they're wrong. That's a real dynamic that exists, but it's not the only thing that's going on. It's one of a number of pieces of a puzzle that we need to put together to really understand what's happening and what proper, functional, healthy societies should look like, and how they should be put together. And the problem with the oppressor and oppressed is that the revolution is unseating the oppressor, right? That's the goal of having these and what end up being violent revolutions, because I mean, I don't know that we've seen any social revolution, like governmental or otherwise, that aren't really bloody. So the revolution's it's gonna cost lives, but you know, it's all in service of the greater good and serving the oppressed. Except those are very poorly defined terms. You know, how do you know it's like, how do you know who's the rich person to tax, right? It's like, well, the guy has got more than I do, right? That's the guy, right?
That's the guy.
I have all these friends right now, and they're flirting with these really, really stupid, dangerous, tired ideas of socialism that some of them we've applied really well. And you're absolutely right that the best functional societies on earth have a degree of socialism that is really critical to functioning, because you do have to take care of the poor, right? Yeah, I mean, you get these poorly defined words, and so then suddenly I'm the oppressed because X, Y, or Z. You try to get yourself in that category until someone else with a bigger gun shows up and says, no, actually, you're wearing glasses, and that means you're educated, and therefore you're part of the oppressor class, right? And they go after basically competency, because it's impossible for you to. At the end of the day, we all have limitations to our abilities. We all do, right? That's just the reality of existence. You're not Michael Jordan. You're never going to be, right? And so in order to get equality of outcome, if you're limited here and he's limited here, we have to bring him down. We can't bring you up. And that's the fundamental problem, is that you end up having to force the issue. And at some point it tips over to violence. And there's a bad actor in society that gets rewarded for doing this. And right now we're seeing it with some of this this racial oppression stuff. It's like, well, it's not about, if we have to bring up the black income, right, to get it to be equal to whites or something, which it's kind of stupid. What about the Asians who are way above us, right? So we won't talk about that though. But like, how are we going to do this, right? It's like a lot of the conversation isn't about empowerment the way that we would want to focus on it. It's about taking, right? And I'm like, ooh, I mean, it's just a dangerous idea. It is. And I mean, I don't think taxation is theft by any means. It's contributing to this social organization that we have that we all benefit from. But you know, there is some kind of line here where it tips over and it really does become theft. And we're like, where do we set the dial, right? And I really don't. I was doing this research, and you might appreciate this. I was looking up, because there's this site. Who was I listening to? It was it's the 100th anniversary, and he's dead now. But John Rawls, have you heard of him?
John Rawls?
Yeah. Does it ring a bell?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Was he an economist?
American philosopher, but his ideas do relate to economics. He wrote a book called The Theory of Justice. And
I think I've read that book.
Yeah, there's a lot in there. One of the principles actually is like, he's trying to, how do you construct fair and just societies? And he said that what you should do philosophically is take what's called the original position, which is, imagine that you and I were setting up a game to play, right? And we were trying to decide what the rules would be. But now imagine within that game, when you go to play the game, you don't know who you're going to be in the game, right? You could be anyone. So you want to set up the game before you get into it, so that no matter where you end up, you're okay with it. And that's called the veil of ignorance, is that you don't know where you're going to be. So economically speaking, if we're going to map that out into our society, you say, okay, you don't know where you're going to end up in terms of how rich your parents were, or whatever abilities you might have. You don't know where you're going to line up. So how would you set up a system that no matter where you were, you're okay to play the game? And so he says roughly what you want to do is focus on trying to create opportunity for the bottom quintile, the lowest 20% of income. If you can focus on trying to support them and bring them up, then that's like a fair and just society. I think that's a very noble thought. And I think it does lend itself toward creating just societies. Now, I was looking up the data for where do Black people sit in America? Like who is this bottom 20%, let's say, in America, right? And people are like, well, Black people aren't making money. I was like, well, actually in 2010, this is pretty old data, so I assume it's gotten better since then. 2/3 of Black people weren't in that category. There's 33% of Blacks were in that category, which is probably twice the representation that they should have. So it's a lot, but it's also a really terrible proxy for poor. You've got all these people who they're not rich, but
But not poor
they're
either.
middle class, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's like, okay, what conversation are we having about trying to help poor people? You know, and I understand there's a lot of other arguments for why you should be helping Black people because of the history. I totally appreciate that, but at the end of the day, you know, and we had this conversation too. It's like I don't really care about helping Michael Jordan's kids. I really don't.
No, none of us should.
Right. And so, you know, sending a check to every single Black person, regardless of their socioeconomic status, to me seems like a really poor proxy for trying to deal with the legacy of slavery.
Yeah.
I think there'd be a better way to do it. Maybe take the people, anyone who's in the bottom half of the income, right? That category. If you're there, perfect. You know, you get a check. If also, you know, but that's just a messy business trying to come up with reparations arguments.
Especially when you start saying send people checks.
Right.
Like
right.
I'm not for sending anyone a check. I'm for creating opportunities for people to write their own checks.
Yeah, what about this? Yeah, I totally hear that. That's a great way to think about it. What about this policy initiative? What if you took the 100 poorest communities in America, most of which will probably be communities of people of color, and you took $10 billion out of the federal budget. This is not my idea, but I think it's a good one. And you invest $100 million every year into these communities, which on the federal fisc it's a rounding error, right?
Yes, small amount.
Very small amount. But think of if you were to invest in those communities directly, think of how much you could get done. 100 million goes a long way.
A lot. It does. I mean, think about like just try to walk into a few Detroit neighborhoods, and you say, okay, simple, get everyone off housing and urban development rent roll, and tell them, hey, my friends, there's all these houses here, right? All of them are now worthless, right? Which means the banks lost the money if they had any mortgages on there, right? Now, if you turned around, forget that. If you turn around and said, hey, we're going to, gentrify or renovate all these neighborhoods, and then get everyone onto who is on housing and urban development rent rolls, right? You work with a community bank and you say, hey, first off, we need to teach these people about something called a mortgage and how it works. Two, because these houses are the value zero, when you fix them, you make sure the value of those houses over 20 years can be paid by the rent the government is paying for them. But on one condition, they have to basically keep them in good functioning order because they're their houses. And in 10 years' time, they're going to keep the equity. Right?
Yeah.
Then with your 100 million, you could create potentially, I don't know, because these are like, if you look at these Detroit places, they sell them for $15,000, $20,000. Okay, they're in bad condition, right? But this is what we're using the 100 million for. Renovate the places and then say, hey, as opposed to having you as a, social tenant on a place you'll never own, right? Here's an opportunity, right? If all of you guys get into these houses, pay the exact same rent you're paying in a government house, right? Over the next 25 years, the house becomes yours.
Yeah, get them in the gate. Sorry.
But then the backflip of that is that people are going to learn to look after their neighborhoods. They're going to learn how to pay their bills, pay the mortgage. It's always on time. You can't get the government rent check and go buy drinks fast because the bank will kick you out. Right? So all the skills people didn't learn when they were young, they're going to learn them now because now this is your place. It's not a social housing house. The government owns where they're paying for your money, where if your rent is late today, they're going to give you 10 days to pay and then they can't even wait for your next rent check. No. Right? So people are going to learn these skills. And over 10 years, they're going to build equity. Then eventually their kids won't be in social housing.
Yeah, but you also have to think, I like that idea. I think it'd be interesting to see how it gets implemented, because a lot of the times if you give people too much, they take it for granted. And so, but I think what you're saying is that it's going to be the same cost. They're still going to be, paying rent, but at a subsidized rate.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that that's a good approach.
Yeah. But also
because
profiting from the equity, because now you see, if you look at, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
that's
short,
okay.
cut you
Go
off there,
ahead.
but if you look at, I'll give you an example. In fact, I was talking to someone about this the other day. See, in Tennessee, in what's it called, when they killed this woman, Brenna Tyler, in what's it called, Kentucky,
Oh, yeah.
then they killed this fellow in St. Louis, George Floyd, right? Entire neighborhoods were burnt down. You know why? Because people didn't have a stake in them. Now, here, same picture differently, right? They killed a kid in Atlanta, or Amal Aubrey or someone, like some guy killed him, right? Now, in Atlanta, there were demonstrations too, but there's no destruction. You know why?
Don't ship or
Because
eat.
Atlanta has the largest concentration of black money in the States. Right? So every corner you look, people own the real estate. They own the businesses. They own the, what's it called, Timmy's franchise. They own the Subway. They own the Kentucky Fried Chicken. So yes, we're going to demonstrate, but no one's going to burn my building here.
Right. No, I think you're absolutely right. It's ownership in the community. That's right. Because if you keep handing people things, then they don't have that. It's just not, they don't have a sense that it's theirs because they've earned it, they built it, they took risk, they worked hard. All those things are how you tie yourself to some possession, which is, I've thought a lot about that sense of ownership in a community and what it does to protect the community from exactly what you're describing. Now, on that note, I'm thinking about, okay, a person, some people actually, a lot of the times when you get into crime and you're operating the black market, it's because you don't have a sense of ownership in a society, like homelessness. It's like you live in a parallel universe, right? And your world is not the same world as everyone else. There's a perspective issue, right? And how do you help a person to integrate into society with the rest of us so we can function together and you can be lifted out of extreme poverty?
Yeah. Also, if you look at like crime in inner city neighborhoods, if you look at crime in inner city neighborhoods, there's a correlation between high towers, the long towers in one area, and crime. And there's a relationship between the fact that everyone in those buildings doesn't own it. They all get a government rent check and pay it to people who run the building and have a small amount left for them, right? But also, even within the towers, one gang is in one tower, one gang is in the next tower. So the gangs protect each other's towers and commit crime at the other tower.
So I have a friend who's working on that problem actually at Jane and Finch. Actually, I'm not sure if she's doing it anymore, but they're pretty sneaky about it. I really like this. They have an after school program for kids in the communities, and they get the young kids from both gangs to become friends. And I think that's an awesome, it's a sneaky solution. I really like it. But yeah, no, you're right. So the ownership issue, I was thinking about ending the war on drugs. Come on, right? Stop this, because why are these gangs fighting each other? I mean, you could talk about, whatever past grievances, you shot this person versus that, going back and forth. But a lot of it's over territory for, pushing drugs, right? And so if drugs are legal, then suddenly there's nothing to fight over. And if you give people opportunity, like employment, for example, to better themselves,
there's nothing to fight over.
Yeah, you create a wage subsidy to encourage employment in these areas, because you got to think, like, why are these specific neighborhoods suffering, right? Like, what's going on? And it's usually economic depression and crime, right? Like, why wouldn't you want to live in those neighborhoods, Detroit, right? It's not safe. So, to make it safe, if you can get rid of these gangs by eliminating the black markets that they're operating in, and then creating real opportunity for people to work and integrate with society, I think that 10, 20 years from now, it could be totally different.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to cost that much money.
Yeah, because actually, no, it wouldn't. Because see, like a fair chunk of like inner city, like rundown neighborhoods, all these depressed neighborhoods, forget like Toronto and this, that. Toronto is expensive, right? But if you look at like the rest of this world, Alabama and all these places, the things that create wealth, like real estate, are the lowest because people haven't been in the ownership business. There's no equity. So you have to create the equity by gentrifying a neighborhood, but keeping the people there without getting them out, right? And then the only way to do that is saying like this thing of 100 million, right? Typical community, I don't know, the Bronx, name it, or one of these rough neighborhoods. If you got into what's it called, obviously the day programs of this world, and then I don't know, one or two courts, you know, and then one or two libraries, and then one or two good teachers who want to stay, right? And then you focused on you won't get everyone, but you can get a few people to move the needle, right? But every statistics I've seen that has combined skills development and employment, and then some form of ownership in real estate in poor communities has changed the neighborhoods. I mean, like just look at Brixton, right? The Brixton I grew up in, right, in the late 80s, was, you could see Jane here is actually a joke. The Brixton I grew up in, right? People were being shot there every day, being knifed every time. There's no traffic, nothing was cooking there, right? Then Labour came in and they came on the platform of literally, trying to do something about the large number of inner city kids, mainly immigrants like me, who had come in off the backdrop of the many African wars, and are now in England either as refugees or or kids from parents who are refugees. And now you have so many of them, you have to think about something to do for them, right? And then they said, okay, it's one of three things. There's some large neighborhoods in the southeast where we know where these kids are, right? But also they don't stay there, right? They wake up and you see them in London Bridge fighting with someone. You see them in the city beating up someone. We don't like that. So what we need to do is get in these neighborhoods and try to see what we can do alongside community leaders to change this process, right? Then they did obviously do a few investments in schools, right? They bought us a pool, they bought us basketball court, a few of these libraries and this, that. But the biggest piece they did was saying, hey, the flat the government is giving you to live in, the social housing flat that you're living in, you're gonna have a right to buy it at 40%.
Wow.
Then they talked to the bank to say, look, none of these people can prove their incomes, but they're going to guarantee their mortgages. Then, like literally over 10 years, entire generation of people, mainly Black, Brown, Caribbean, name it, got on the property ladder. And literally, if you take a picture of Brixton in 1994, 95, like 93, between 93 and like 95, and you go back and look at the same neighborhood now, you'll be surprised. People have fixed their flats, right? And now people like my parents, like my mom, they're old now, they've gone back to Africa, but they still keep their flats because they paid them out already. And now, here's the funny bit. The Brixtons of this world are now the trendy neighborhoods where everyone who wants a place closer to the city, we have got all the amenities and no trouble, you're buying in Brixton. And these flats people bought for like 80,000 are now 500,000.
I mean, you poured a lot of gasoline on that market, though. It's a pretty hot market in London, as I understand it. But but yeah, no, I love that. I think that I was thinking about the costs. So I was going to ask you about default rates and such, but I honestly because of the scope of the project, I can't imagine how that didn't save the government so much money.
A lot.
Saves them so much money.
Yeah, think about this, right? Either you're going to pay rent for these people up to when they die. That's what social housing is, right?
Yep.
The government cuts your rent check every time, right? All this housing stock from what's it called? The government. This is the government. This is the council, like your equivalent of TCHC, right? So the government funds TCHC. THC has buildings, right? Those buildings have people who want social housing, right? So now the money comes from the government, goes to someone, you pay TCHC your rent check. Now the government has not said, no, let's do this. We're going to talk to TCHC and tell them, hey, we want you to go through your tenants, find how many of them pay their rent on time when we give them the money all the time. Now, those people pay their rent and their bills on time. We're going to tell them that each of them who has their flat, they have a right to buy it at 50%. Obviously, TCHC is going to make noise. Then the government will cut TCHC a check for the equity in those 50% of the equity in those houses. So TCHC is now even. But now TCHC and a bank like Lloyd's or someone are now going to obviously do the transfers, this, that for this person to get a house. Now TCHC is now out of the housing management business. Now it's gone to the bank. But now the bank will be collecting the mortgage, right? And now everyone in each of these houses is learning another skill, right? That the better you pay this equity to go after that you didn't have before. Before you're paying all this money without getting nothing, none of it. Now you're paying down a mortgage and you got 50% of the value of your house from the government. All you have to keep paying your mortgage, right? And then over time, you've paid it out. But now you have your house, say 10 years down the road, you have your house, right? And the government no longer has its, what's it called, a tenant on its rental who can never get off it. And the good thing with that is that when you get one person off the government rental, you don't just get that person off. You get off their kids too. Because once they get into this game of understanding equity, they're not going back to not having equity. It's very simple.
Yeah, you got chips in the table now.
Yeah.
So, okay. Yeah, I think we're in agreement that this is going to be way cheaper than the current status quo, just continuing to run out. I like the structure a lot. I think that what I really like about this program is it's targeted very effectively. And what I mean is, again, like the Trudeau loan program that he was rolling out for people of color so that you could have a loan from the government to start a business. And I'm like, Henry's needing a loan from the government. We're going to take the money. Don't get me wrong. But it's a stupid use of resources because you don't need it. You know, you just don't. You can underwrite your own, right?
Exactly.
So
this, yeah, exactly. I've been here long enough to know how to get a loan.
Yeah,
I don't need the government to show me how to get a loan.
That's right. And community housing is great because you know exactly the people there have already qualified as being poor, right? And then furthermore, to your point about finding the ones that are paying the rent, they've got now they've actually got a little bit of it's almost like a credit score, really. And so then you can help the banks to underwrite a little bit better, and that lowers your risk of default for sure. But then at the same time, the default risk is almost a moot point because we were on the hook for so much of their upkeep anyway, right? It's just transitioning over so that the individual can be responsible. And what a beautiful outcome when a person can be elevated to the point where they feel like they have agency.
Yeah, exactly. Right, because that outcome doesn't just get that person; it gets everyone after him or her.
Well, and around too.
And that's what you want. You want to ensure that like when you do an intervention, it just doesn't lift one generation out. It takes everyone with it.
Yep. I mean, I look at my family,
and that's one of the ways to do it.
My grandparents, all of them sort of were, they were brought up poor in rural Canada. And, at that generation, this is the same for her family, her grandparents, they were dirt poor, but they focused on the long run. And so much of us were just focused on our own lives. We're not thinking about the legacy. But for them over out east, it was always about legacy. It was always about setting up the kids and setting up the grandkids and establishing something for them. And they became very wealthy, and they run a large farming operation now out in Nova Scotia. But it was this long-term focus. The grandmother had an amount of capital from her spinster aunts or whatever, and so she was wise with it. She had a little bit on the table, and it was always about legacy, always about legacy. And then the whole family now has a great deal of wealth, and that's like, it's a social safety net for the whole family. Is like, you can just go back to Nova Scotia, and there'll be a house for you to stay in, right? If you couldn't pay for your own. So you're absolutely right, and it does create so much benefit that just continues to grow and grow exponentially. So I don't know. I think the same thing is true about doing poverty alleviation initiatives in Africa. That's why I think it's so important to focus on where the work needs to be done. It's like helping elevate the position of women. Most of the work that we need to do isn't necessarily in Canada. There's stuff we can do here to help, but the real heavy lifting is in other countries, and it's harder to do. And I understand that, obviously, if you're the one suffering because, sexual assault is still a real problem, that's an issue that you're going to care about if you've been exposed to it. And maybe you don't really understand what's going on around the world, but I think it's incumbent on all of us to educate ourselves to really get it, right? Like, there's like what you're saying with these girls going through in Uganda, the shutdown as it happened here had completely different ramifications than it did for these girls.
And people, for the most part, seem to believe that we suffer the same way, and I think that's a complete ignorance of what sort of world we live in or we inherit.
Yeah. And it's just, at the end of the day, political expediency is to say that, Justin Trudeau doesn't get elected by pandering to Ugandans, right? He's got to pander to Canadians. And so he's got to care about the issues that we care about, right? Fair enough. And most of us haven't had these experiences. You and I are quite privileged in that regard to have seen a good bit of the world at a relatively young age, so that we could change our beliefs and shape what it is that we think we should be doing with the amount of time and abilities that we have. So we're pretty uncommon that way. But the most interesting people I know are kind of like us that way, in that they've had these formative experiences, and we can grow from them. And we're like, oh, actually, no, sorry. We're just a bunch of little whiny brats over in Canada, and there's real suffering going on, and it's over here. Right?
Over here.
Yeah. So I don't know. All right, it's been an hour. I think I'm feeling pretty good. Is there anything else you want to talk about, or should we just call it?
No, you didn't tell me about what you when you read that what's it called link. What you how you digested it mentally. How did you see it?
Yeah, I was trying to sit there and think carefully about it. Yeah, and I'm glad that you're asking me, because I was hoping to process with you a bit, because I find that you come on pretty strong with some of these issues because you've thought about it a lot, and you're pretty passionate about the problems, and you have an idea of where they come from and how to solve them, that I'm a little bit outside of that space, so I don't really understand them. So, but what struck me was, okay, private institution, I suppose they can operate on their own terms, just from a philosophical conception, I think that that's the way to go, is letting private people kind of do what they want to do. But I do know about the problem. I was aware of the fact that the issue of education not being delivered in the correct language is a fundamental problem that's going to continue to perpetuate these issues. And so I thought, okay, well, as long as there is an option for education in the language of your choosing or the language of your upbringing, then I'd be okay with that. But it sounds as though that's just not the case, and there's not enough money to build that system, and that would be a decent intervention. I think that your intervention of saying every time you're going to put up an Afrikaans only school, you got to put up an English or a Zulu or a Shona school. I think that's a fair solution. I think, because what do you say? You say, like, we don't want to take everything from the white people, but they need to help out and share with their African brothers. And I think that would be a way of doing it.
What's it called? Like any Africans, for them to I think over the long haul believe they belong to the African continent, right? They have to take the benefit of being an Afrikaans and be prepared to share some of those with the disadvantages that those benefits have created for them. Right, and the idea that in principle, like I was saying before, I told the guy also on the thing on the WhatsApp, in principle, everyone has a right to do with their money what they choose to do with it. That I agree with. I don't want to tell anyone to do their money anything other than that they have to do with it, right? But that's a principle in a world where no one had any advantages ahead of someone for 300 years, right? So they've got 300 years worth of governments that used all the money for them without asking anyone. This government has to ask the Africans what's going to do with the money that they've collected from everyone, right? So for 300 years, the government had no problem getting all the money from everyone and using 90% of it only for the white people. So because of that, they build up generations of wealth for them to be able to build all these schools quickly without having any problems, right? So the Africans and a bit of the English people and the Africans can never have enough money to do what they're doing, right? They don't own 90% of the economy. It's still in the African hands. So because of that, I think, right, if they're not going to build if they're going to build a school that says all of you have to speak in Afrikaans, you have to learn in Afrikaans, it's one of two things: build an identical one, or within that school, or within the exact same campus, have a program to translate your Afrikaans to English and all the other languages, so everyone else going to that school can go to school in the language they want to understand the program in without having learned Afrikaans.
Yeah,
like
that seems like a pretty basic solution. And this kind of reminds me of our conversation about who's that lawyer? The pre-civil rights guy who was getting all these rulings.
Oh, my friend, Charles Hamilton.
Charles Hamilton, yeah, Hamilton Houston, right? And he, he was sort of turning these rules against him, but the rules existed, right? And so he was getting them to apply them. Now, in Canada, we have an interesting parallel too, where it's, the French language, right? And what rights exist for a person to be educated in they're one of two national languages. And it's pretty aggressive over there, and they've got a different set of considerations, including a massive inferiority complex with the rest of the country. And because there's a story that was like a pet shop owner who was selling a parrot, and the parrot couldn't speak French, and so he got fined. And you're like, so they have language police over there, and I think so you can go a little too far, but what you're talking about is providing a basic level of education in the language that you speak, and that's a basic right.
Yeah.
And what you're describing to me seems to be, a de facto lack of provision by government to these people, just not because they're not trying, it's just literally they can't do it, right? And so on a practical level, you still have apartheid kind of going on that level. And obviously,
so the government doesn't have the resources and the skills to scale this up as fast as they should. They should do more, but they can't do it as fast as they need to get all the people they need to get out of the problem.
Yeah, and this is the same thing with hospitals there too. I understand, right? Yeah. You've got private hospitals they're fine, but the public hospitals are, you can get robbed in your bed, I've been told, just sitting there, and it's like, whoa.
So these are issues that think about quite carefully as we go along.
Yeah, and I just think the trick is there's a way of taking a person who's got a lot of wealth or income and saying, hey, we need to figure out how to share this more equitably to support people who are suffering. And then there's this video I saw, I don't know if it was Durban or if it was Joburg, but there was this white tourist guy who was he got mugged in the middle of the day in a crowded street full of people.
That has to be Joburg. Joburg is what happened there.
Yeah. So then you see that, you just think to yourself, okay, this is a really broken society. And, for us to fix that, it's going to be a collaborative effort where everyone needs to work together. And that includes people who've got a lot of wealth, but only to a point, because as you and I know that wealth doesn't just appear in your life, generally speaking, right? No. You build something, right? And so if the government comes in and says, we're going to take it, then people like you and me, we're not going to bother, we're going to do something else. And we need people like you, right? Because how many other people have you, how many employees and contractors do you have in your network now?
A lot. I employ 30 people directly in my offices.
Yeah, and then how many
32, I believe.
how
Now,
many
contractors about somewhere in the, I don't know, 5,000.
Yeah, that's a lot of benefit you've provided to society, and you're making a lot of money for it. And I don't want to take that away from you because I want you to do something else like that. That's good, right? And we turn it into the knowledge box, right? And I think that
Yeah.
that's fantastic because that's where we're going to be able to do the most good in creating opportunities that didn't exist for
Yeah.
a very targeted, specific group of people. And I think we should probably, even as we go further with this project, think about lobbying for some of what you were describing about the social housing. I mean, I wonder if there's a political
Yeah,
angle we should be
sure.
taking here. We should, yeah. I wonder if it would be, I suppose, unfortunately, I might need to just eat my vegetables and go talk to the Liberal Party because I don't know that the Conservatives are going to do this one.
No, conservatives won't take it. You know what, they could.
They should. There's a good conservative political argument for them to take it. I agree. However, you got to think about their voter base, right? You're dealing with rednecks and all this kind of stuff, right, out in the country, and handouts and all that.
They are going to benefit too. Because it's a countrywide project. Even rednecks in the middle of nowhere and social housing, they're high. They're on social housing in a cabin somewhere that someone built that they can't pay for.
Right. But I think also maybe the conservative argument is, if you're conservative and you want to, have a smaller government per se, this is a way for us to build that plan.
Exactly. So we can get government out of social housing.
Yeah, because you don't want to have as much government, right? Conservatives, right?
Yeah.
Reduce the budget.
This is your way to do it.
Yeah, I think you could go both ways. Actually, that's interesting because if you make the conservative argument, the liberal argument seems really obvious, right?
Yeah.
That you're trying to help poor people. And the conservative argument, that's very interesting, isn't it?
I know.
There's an opportunity.
Here is the funny bit. This whole thing, they call it right to buy in England, right? That the whole concept actually came from a conservative government. They just couldn't bring themselves to do it. Then Labour did it.
Oh, good.
Thatcher actually thought about it, but she struggled to pull it off.
Oh, people hate her, but she was pretty clever, wasn't she?
No, she was. I didn't like her views on race, but but when I got to England and I sort of got to understand how she was able to use the government differently. I've got a bit of respect for her.
Yeah, so there's an MP right now who's just been blacklisted by China. Have you heard about this?
Yeah.
Michael Chong?
Yeah.
I really like him. He seems like a principal policy guy. I think he
is, but they've also done it in England, eh?
They don't want. Oh, blacklisted.
They've also blacklisted, some MPs in England, they can't go to China. China isn't joking.
No, they're not. And we've given them basically the world's economy to just squeeze us. Yikes.
They own all the dollars in the world, so they're living off the interest.
Yeah, basically. Well, not exactly, but yeah, there's going to be a point where there's a balance of power issue, and unfortunately, we don't have antitrust laws to break up their monopoly. So, but yeah,
if we don't work with them.
That's right. Yeah, no, they don't play nice. So. No, but on a practical level, I would actually want to approach someone like a Michael Chong and say, hey, can we look at trying to roll something like this out? Because there's a really strong conservative and really strong. It's a bipartisan. I mean, we don't do bipartisan here, but it's across the aisle. Greens and the NDP will be for it too. So it's really just the conservatives you need to win over, and I think our argument's pretty good.
Yeah, it's also based on what's it called. One, sound economic policy. Two, people have done it before and it has worked.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
and I mean, if you can get poor people into that hot Toronto real estate market, that's going to help.
See?
Yeah, good for them, right? The program gets more and more expensive every other month, though. Now that we're
exactly, they start to think about the fact that given what's it called, $2 million for a house. Now you're giving someone a condominium at 20% of the price.
Whoops, that's not going to work. I mean, they'll be quite wealthy. It's going to be a safe bet for the bank.
Exactly. But in the long run, trust me, in the long run, the amount of money the equity write-off pales in comparison to one, the socioeconomic benefits of lifting many people out of poverty by doing it.
Yeah, and I think instead of having the government insure the loans directly, we could just use our existing Genworth, CMHC.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you could just say, hey, part of this program is going to be buying into these insurance programs so that we don't have to worry about default. We already have the systems in place and they're very functional and they're well underwritten as far as I understand. So just pay that premium when you do the transaction and roll it into the mortgage the way that everyone else does.
People can pay.
We already do this.
And here's the funny bit. When the government cash the equity check to TCHC, whatever these things are, they can use that money to go build more towers. So the government doesn't have to give them the money. Now every year they have to give them money to go build new towers.
So now you can expand supply.
That's it.
Yeah, I like that. Supply is a real problem. How much of this real estate market? I mean, obviously right now it's interest rates, right? Interest rates are nuts low. And what I think average real estate prices in Kitchener for a detached home last month hit 900,000 for the first time. And so it's up $200,000 in 2 months. And the thing is, it's going on everywhere. And so you need a powerful explanation to say why it's happening in St. John's, Newfoundland, and also Toronto, and also, Edmonton and everywhere across the country. And the answer is, of course.
One is supply, but I also think there is there is a deeper explanation for it than just supply.
It's interest rates right now. That's what it is.
One of them.
That's the only thing that could do, but it's hitting every single market. That's the only factor that's consistent across all markets, right? Is prevailing interest rates.
Yeah, but also I read, maybe I'm going to find this thing and send it to you actually. About between interest rates and then equity porting across the country because of the impact of remote work, right? Because you found that in the past, people were pegged to the areas they work. With that peg being removed, because even post-COVID, many companies are not going to be having downtown offices with 40 people in them. They're going to have as few people in the office as possible and have people work remotely for the most part, which means every area that had many people coming into work every day is going to change to people coming in for social weekends to watch a soccer game, a basketball game, a hockey game, or a concert, right? And people are going to get out of living in small townhouses and condominiums into living a bit more in the suburbs on detached homes. Mm-hmm. So many people who are like the townhouses, condominiums in the cities of this world have either sold or got the equity out and are moving in other places where they want to be, where the quality of life is better.
Yeah, and that's going to keep going. I totally agree with that. But I think that's part of the story of last year if you look at the 416 versus the 905. So I think that's right. That's the correct explanation, but that's very localized. I'm talking about this year's story of the first 2 months, which is interest rates are starting to come back up and people are trying to capitalize on the low rates. And so they're getting themselves in the bidding. Yeah, I've had a number of clients try to buy in this market and they're competing with stupid numbers of offers. And pretty much everyone's going $200,000 over asking, So I think it's interest rates for now. So that obviously, as that kind of continues to go up, it'll be interesting because people can't afford these houses, not at those prices. But they're getting into these mortgages. And so, if you just bought, then you're subject to a rate increase, let's say in 5 years when your mortgage renews. And then at that point, what are the rates that we're facing? And what's your payment going to be now? Do you want to maybe sell and get out of this market if you can't, if your payment's going to double?
Yeah, then you're going to have a problem.
So there's people who are paying $2,000 a month and that could easily go up to $4,000.
Yeah, that's a bit crazy. But
that is a bit crazy.
If you're one of the generation of people who are moving equity around, you may have overpaid, but you have like $400K worth of down payment. Mm-hmm. So then your mortgage outstanding, even when rates change, won't be as big to cause you a problem.
But I have clients who are taking out, they're starting at 200,000. So they've got maybe, I don't even know exactly how much equity. We'll have to see because the specific client, they just sold a house, but they're probably moving from a $200,000 mortgage to a maybe a $500,000 or $600,000 mortgage, right? And if rates are at 1% versus 3%, the math works out. Your payment's actually pretty close. If that goes back up to 3%,
then you have a bit of a trick.
well, yeah, and I don't know what do we do in that scenario. It's just going to be dicey because their payment's going to be more than half their net income, right? Plus all the other stuff that we're trying to do. So I mean, we really are mortgaging our future for the present to keep the economy going right now with these low interest rates. But it's going to be really interesting. I mean, maybe they stay low forever because the government can't afford their debt either. So
yeah, because obviously the government can't afford what's it called housing.
Right, a crash, yeah.
They can't afford the housing crash.
I don't know, man. And that's what the Bank of Canada governor, Tiff Macklem, right? Yeah, he's basically committed to low rates for the foreseeable future. And I think that flies in the face of, I think, US policy a little bit.
Yeah, but I think most OECD countries for the medium term are going to hold their rates no matter what happens on the housing market and something else.
Well, other countries that are facing this kind of housing bubble, they've been taking more aggressive action, including interest rates. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's out of control. Especially, well, you're not there anymore, but Toronto. I mean, I imagine you've got properties in Toronto, but
I do. But I came in way early before there was a problem. So no matter which way this goes, I'm good.
Oh, you're fine. Yeah, you're laughing, right? You're not levered up to the gills.
No. I'm just watching the papers and saying, okay, they sold that there for that. Okay, now I know what I'm sitting on.
That's right. Yeah. And how much capital gains tax you'll be on the hook for when you go to sell.
If I did go there, but I'm not going there anytime soon.
No, nobody sells. Why would you sell?
Mm-mm.
You just hold and then lever up, right? If you need capital.
Yeah, exactly. My selling days are finished. Now my thing is what's it called accumulation, because I'm going to get to 50 and then ask myself the difficult questions of what am I going to do with the rest of my natural life.
That's a very, very interesting space to be in, where you're like, well, I don't need it, so what should we do? Well, and then I look at Mackenzie Bezos, or what's her name now. She's been doing some good work, eh? Have you been tracking her?
Yeah, she got herself a new guy now. She got married.
No.
Yeah, she got herself a new guy.
He was like a high school teacher or something. Yeah. She seems great.
I know what, I think she's great. She's cutting a lot of checks. She wants the money out of her hands fast.
Yeah, and she's got a whole team that's consulting for her what to do with all this billions of dollars, and it's like awesome. That's exactly what you want to do.
That's
right?
exactly where I'm going to be at 50 years. I need to think about this carefully. But I've got a fair chunk of thoughts as I get there. In fact, one of these days, I'm going to set up an appointment and come talk to you about a few things I'm thinking about.
Yeah, well, I have links in my email signature, so you booked that appointment.
Exactly, I booked one.
But yeah, no, it's an interesting problem to get yourself into, to be at that point where you really are it's like, okay, I did the work, and now I have to think about exactly how I'm going to employ this for the maximum benefit for the things I care the most about. You, of course, care about giraffes. So among, well, why is it the northern rhino? There's the one left now, or did that rhino die?
There's the black rhinos, have a few left.
Yeah.
And then the northern, I think there's about 2 males left somewhere.
But we're working on being able to recreate the species. Have you heard about this?
Yeah, I've heard about that.
That's pretty cool. That'd be really amazing if we could.
Yeah, if we could. Right now, I think they've airlifted a few of them into the Australian desert as a starting point.
That makes sense. Yeah, it seems a lot safer there.
Yeah, at least the Aussies don't do poaching.
Right. Well, but is it hippos or rhinos? I think it's hippos that Pablo Escobar.
Yeah, Pablo he has them in Colombia.
Had them. Yeah, that's amazing. It worked.
It did, yeah. Literally, there's a whole pack of them in Colombia.
See, the dreams that you can dream up when you have unlimited resources, right, Henry?
Exactly. And imagine how many of the guys did. When you talk about Pablo, Colombian hippos. Like everything else is gone. Now he brought us suppose we can forgive him for all the trouble he caused us.
Yeah. Well, that's a miraculous political success story too, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Getting somebody in there who could stand up to him. And I think the country was just kind of fed up with it. Do you know what I mean?
Well, he caused way too much strife to people. Like he tried to take out the president. Then via this flight he tried to take out. They had 400 people die because when they get one guy to die. Like
Yeah.
it got to the point where I think he had way too much money, way too much power. Didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah. Build his prison, I guess, right?
Well, he did that too.
But yeah, no, I think you can get to that point if you don't have a moral grounding and direction, right? That's what it is. Like there's this business is built on the black market and exploiting people because they're addicted to drugs, breaking international law, and the pile of bodies that are behind you to get where you got, right? I mean, that's the opposite of exactly how you're wired, right? So it's basically fuel in the tank and where are you going to drive, right? And so you're looking at your car and you're thinking, okay, wow, here we are, we've got resources now. What's the dream, right? More property. I say Hawaii and Portugal.
See,
right? These are good. These are all very good.
Yeah.
And then I still think we have to focus on Africa, but
yeah, I do.
I just want to, I don't know. I want to think more broadly too. This is good. The knowledge box is really good because I feel like that it's right in the correct space for us.
Yeah.
And down the road, I mean, I don't see myself ever retiring, right? Like what I do is, I mean, I wouldn't be, I tell my clients, like, well, I tell people, oh, when are you going to retire? And it's like, well, I could retire, but all my clients are still going to come and bug me about financial questions. So
Exactly.
may as well get paid.
Get paid for it. Number one. Number two, you just transition out of one thing into another. This all it is to you. The idea that you're going to retire in front of a TV and walking a dog and feeding this cat inside there, it won't happen for us. Trust me.
No. But it's about structuring the work the way that you would want to have it structured so that you're enjoying life. No stress. That's important. And then, free to do the things that you want to do. So I see that like in the 10 to 20 hour week range in terms of, structure. And that's just good. I think in general, when you go to retire, I talk to a lot of people about this, but those people who they work steady at like, solid 40, 50 hour week jobs, maybe they're on the line getting a pension and then their day comes and they retire at 62 or whatever. And then, they're dead within a year because they needed the structure and they didn't know how to build their own.
Yeah.
And so couches and televisions and stuff, that was their life. And I think it's a little deeper than that. You ever hear about people who die from a broken heart? Have you heard about this? Like
I've heard of that.
Yeah, a couple that's been together their whole lives. Yeah.
Died immediately after.
Yeah.
They didn't think about life without the person.
Yeah, you didn't have a life outside of your relationship necessarily. Or maybe, other things. I think you could have physiological stress from that would actually, it could trigger underlying health issues. Yeah. So, but I think that when you go to retire, and 50 is a great age to be doing it because that's young retired. And what can't you do at 50? I mean, you still got your health, right?
Yeah.
But hopefully, depends on how much barefoot you keep drinking.
See, but I manage the wine well and stay out of the pressure cooker. At 50, I could give myself maybe 30 more years to impact the world.
Yeah, I see that. Hey man, what did they say? I was at this drag show in Vegas, and there was this drag queen who did comedy, and she was black. And no, she wasn't black. I think she was white actually, but they brought this black person up onto the stage, and he was a gay guy, and he said it was his 50th birthday. But he was like, he didn't look 50, right? And she's like, black don't crack, chocolate don't chip. I'd never heard it before. So I was like, oh man, that's good stuff. And it's like the things these drag queens can get away with that, I can't necessarily.
I know. You'll be, what's it called? You'll be finessed to the way you choose your words.
Yeah, cancel culture, man. I would be canceled in a heartbeat.
See?
Hey, well, we're doing this, and that's it. I don't know. I can tell the story, right? It's not racist.
No. Everyone, we all have a time when, quote unquote, you can't use our words against us.
Right. Yeah. It's. I I have a black friend. That's my excuse, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I was on that call and I was like, I'm the white guy on this call. I was the colorful racial, minority. So there you go.
What's it called? What's the word again? I was what is it? Token black guy in on the board or something. What is the word when
Oh, token. Yeah, token. Yeah, tokenized. I'm the token white guy.
Hey,
So here's what's funny. And I think we'll end on this because I think it's just the funniest thing is that, I hang out with all you guys and we're getting on the ground. We're doing real work, actually trying to help like black people, actually explicitly, right? Poor black people. That's what we're trying to do. Kids, right? And I hear so much lip service of all of these highly educated, high income white people who are doing dick all, and I'm friends with them. And they're all just like, oh, all my white privilege, all this stuff. I'm like, get off your ass and do something. You're trying to make yourself feel better because you have all this guilt. And that's all that this idiotic discussion around privilege is producing in these people is an expression of guilt. And it's counterproductive. The moment I tell you that you're guilty for all of these sins, then now, and you believe it and you feel that, now you're putty in my hands. And this is about power. Now I can control you and tell you what to do because you're a bad person and you feel bad about it. Like, and how many poor black kids were helped in that moment?
Zero.
Yeah, in fact, actually, it probably hurt people, not just those people there. But yeah, so I find it very idiotic. And what we're doing is actually real work. So
yeah, like I call them what's it called? Keyboard warriors.
Yeah. Twitter champions.
Champions. And then what's it called? They pick up the golf cart and go golfing and drink champagne, come back and watch the TV.
Yeah. That's the same guy who said, "Oh, I thought up the iPad before Steve Jobs did." And it's like, yeah, and what did you do about it?
Exactly.
Yeah, you're useless. Go and bitch about whatever you want to. We're gonna go get the real work done, right? So, and even in this conversation, we actually had a moment of touching on actually getting involved with government and doing top-down solutions. But it's not our style, is it? Though.
No.
It's almost the last thing we think about.
Yeah, but sometimes in order to move an elephant, you need government help. You need a crane. You need a big hammer.
And and that's it. And when you get a great idea like that, and if we can, we can get all this bipartisan support, I think it's like, yeah, actually, not only is it the right solution because of the scope of the problem, but also it's not the kind of fight that I would want to get into. Like a lot of other fights, I just don't have any interest in, or I don't want to get my hands dirty in fighting for them. But this kind of issue, I think everybody walks out looking pretty good.
True.
So, us included, right? That gets, I don't know, we leverage so we start with the knowledge box, we build up this curriculum, we hot dog it. We say, hey, look at all the good stuff we're doing. We're trying different things to help these people. And oh, by the way, this is what we see as a vision for how to actually support them to put wheels on what we're trying to do. It's like, here's how you feed in with the political solution.
Showing them.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
So hey, maybe we'll start to meet some MPs. Once you have enough money, they'll pick up your phone call.
What's it called? You start by in someone's ear over these golf sessions.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. Over these golf sessions you have.
I actually have a close.
You get them start to think about.
I have a close family friend who they're pretty high up there in a extremely large corporation that all of us know by name, and some of us drive their cars. And this guy, he does meet with ministers and the premier and stuff, and it's like, maybe there's an angle here. But he's about to retire, so once he retires, it's like, I wonder if he'll be at those meetings still.
Well, he can retire, but have the phone numbers.
Yeah, right. So if he's got the connection.
Well, it is a phone number and an email. Phone number and an email to say, hey, what's it called? I'm so and so. As you quite aware, I retired. I'm now part of this thing called the knowledge box. A few young people who have some interesting ideas. I want to put them on speaker so they can tell you exactly what they're thinking. That's it.
Yeah, that's it, man. I agree. It's always like, we know that your social capital is probably your number one asset, right? Who do you know?
Yeah,
Who
exactly.
likes you? Who cares about you? And who's willing to listen to you and your crazy ideas?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, exactly. See?
yeah. All right, dude. Let's call it. I'm gonna hit pause on the record, and then we can say goodbye.